and welcome to the Grid Snaps podcast, the premier game development and design podcast. I'm back with Kip Carbone. Kip, the summer is ending. It's sad, I know.
It hardly feels like it was here.
It's probably sadder for me since I've now gone back in time in my life, and now all of a sudden I get summer breaks again. And even
Did you do
though
your summer reading?
um, Well, I mean, I had summer work. One of the mythologies of college work is that you do nothing in the summer. Actually, they will readily pick you up to do summer work, which is what happened. So it was enjoyable. We were doing these sort of virtual laboratory things where we'd use game technology to build, certain things that are in the lab with student sort of teams and studios. So that was kind of an interesting thing that I think is going to, continue. It's not going to just stop, but it kind of began as a summer thing. But nonetheless, it is still, less work overall than you would have, in the academic year. The academic year for me starts tomorrow. My classes don't start tomorrow.
Okay.
But you get 1 week sort of paid time to prepare for the onslaught, and of course with COVID-19, there's all kinds of contingencies, and Purdue is one of the schools that's doing kind of in person, but with all kinds of caveats and adjustments and safety plans and plans upon plans, and the plans have plans. It's like Fred Thompson in The Hunt for Red October, talking about the Russians. To quote him in that movie, the Russians don't take a dump without having a plan, son. That's kind of where we're at. Many plans.
What did Mike Tyson say? Everybody has a plan until they get hit.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
I don't know.
And I think that's like perfectly apropos for opening school again, which I'm all for, by the way. I mean, I can't wait to get back there in person. Mask on, following the the guidelines, all that stuff. I can't wait to get back in person. But just realistically, there's this is one of those things where there's an opinion per person. It seems like, right? Like if you have 100 people, you have 100 different opinions on what we should be doing. And holy cow, it's going to be a challenging, interesting year, but also I think a good one. Kip, how has your summer been? You in the more standard corporate America workaday mold?
We've been surviving, I suppose. Yeah, it's been certainly. I mean, I think we'll all look back at this time and laugh, hopefully.
Something, some kind of.
Remember that time we were like quarantined for 18 months?
Yeah.
Well, I guess like 5 months into it, it seems okay. We're surviving. I think adapting and everything's been pretty good at work. I think everybody's been very open-minded and very helpful and resourceful, and we've all sort of adapted as we come to live in this new normal, as they say.
New normal. All right. I know that's one of your favorite things.
I'll admit I cringe, when I hear that, because it's not. Yeah. But it's been pretty good. I think we were always sort of set up to work remotely, kind of whenever
Right.
we wanted to. Like if we wanted to, I want to take a Friday off, or well, not take a Friday off, but just work from home. And we sort of we're working out a lot of the kinks and stuff that come up, because there is a huge difference between working from home like 100% and then periodically coming into the office and stuff. There's really no substitute for coming into the office and working in a studio environment and collaborating with people one-on-one. But I think we've made great strides to make it as seamless and as be as collaborative as possible under the circumstances. So
Right. Yep.
It's been good.
Absolutely.
And certainly with kids too as well. Like now that for us in Seattle, it's going to be 100% remote learning, and we'll all sort of be all homeschooling but going to public school. So that will be certainly an adaptation of my life that I did not know was going to happen. But we got to roll with the punches.
That's right. So. Roll with it. It's that Mike Tyson was right. You had a plan, and then boom, Let me get that in the camera. Boom.
I had
This
a
is
plan. I thought I had.
yeah.
I thought I was going to live my life, but instead I was going to become a first grade teacher. So
Yeah. Well, fortunately, our schools here in lovely sort of Northwest Indiana are meeting. Cross our in person, crossing our fingers that maintains itself safely and all that. But of course, we'll see what happens. But yeah, really challenging times indeed. But it was still a good summer. My parents were just in town. As you know, we have the new Grid Snap Studios here.
that's
That
right.
was just built. You see the lovely orange wall, and you see actually we both have fish. We both actually have similar tastes and decor. I see. There's like a fish banner on your wall, and I hung a little fish banner that I was too lazy to remove to get the wrinkles out of, which the camera shows
Oh,
off like very very obviously. But like very similar taste in decor. But it was a good summer, and yeah, I'm excited to get the year going. But there's something I wanted to mention before we even got to today's topic. So, by the way, what is today's topic? If you're wondering what it is, listeners, it happens to be Game Dev Soup to Nuts, the final edition, and really a casual one.
it's the nuts.
That's
The
right.
nuts.
Yes, that's exactly right. We've gone through every part of the game. We've gone from the green light to pre-production to production to crunch, and now we're going to talk about finishing projects. And this will be kind of a fun discussion. It'll be kind of a loose discussion about kind of what happens when you finish a project. All the meat and potatoes was kind of in the last discussions. I do encourage everyone to check all of those out. Our goal here has been to document with our recollections and anecdotes and sort of ideas the whole process of making a commercial game. So that is what today's episode is about. But I do have a bit of news that I wanted to share.
Let's hear it. Drop it on the audience right now, live.
So
Rob Howard.
I have been working on a game of my own this summer, and
Dun dun dun.
and it's nowhere near done or anything, but I do think probably by my birthday, which is October 2nd, I'll roll out what I'll call like a 0.5. I'm going to shoot for, basically a complete alpha where all the features I want are there. I'll release it, maybe at least do a video of it or whatever. We'll see. But I'm aiming for, October 2nd as kind of the release of a rough version 1 of this. And I was really hoping that this would be something I would do in the summer. This was something that when I took, this gig, at Purdue, I was really excited about being able to do sort of set aside summers with these kinds of creative things. I knew this summer was going to be hard in terms of actually completing it by the end of the summer, basically because of moving. That was the big thing. When you move house, it obliterates, because it's not actually that much time. It's basically mid-May to mid-August. So it's not actually that, huge chunk of time. And then when basically a month is eaten up for moving, then all things considered, then you're really just left with about just about a month and a half really of at most of time. And then I was doing some paid summer work that was outside of my normal academic year duties, blah blah blah, excuses. I was hoping to actually finish this thing by the end of summer, but that's not going to happen. So I set a new goal. Because unlike the crunch, remember our crunch conversation, I'm my own publisher, so I can just extend my deadline. So I wasn't like working until 4 in the morning, crunching myself, right? And so by now everyone's wondering, what the heck is this game? So here's what it is. The title of the game is going to simply be, I know if you're listening, Kristen from Cold Iron, I'm not saying this state's name right, Nevada, because that's how I say it. I say it Nevada. That's the name of the game.
What's the right name to say it?
I'd have to look. On Twitter, she
Nevada.
mentioned it might be Nevada, yeah, but I say Nevada. Nevada.
Nevada.
But that's the name of the game. What the heck is this game? Well, Kip, you might remember I released a musical album called Nevada at the beginning of the summer. I actually finished that up at the end of May, early June. And this really started as it started really simply. I thought, when I release an album of music, you know what usually happens, Kip? Well, what do you think happens when I release an album? I've released a bunch of them in my life, actually. I think at least 5 or 6 or 7 albums are out there kicking around. What do you think happens?
Uh, Giant after party with fabulous celebrities.
That's right. No, actually, what happens is my mom buys a copy.
Mhm.
I could usually get a couple of friends to buy copies, and then it just kind of dies. With the exception of the very first, I did 2 albums worth of chip tunes. That was something I really got into in like 2008, 9, 10 ish. The first one I did actually like did okay, and by okay I mean like made me $300, right? That's for self-made for indie music, that's okay. The rest of them just kind of like sell 4 or 5 units and just linger. So I thought, I did this music, I'm proud of this music, I think it's pretty cool. Maybe I can make an interactive music video for it, kind of flex my game dev muscles. And then what happens is I sat, so it started out like not really like a game, more like, hey, you can maybe move a character around and cool things happen that have to do with the music. And it's kind of like just an interactive tour of the album. And you know what happened, Kip?
What's that?
Here's what happened. I started massively binging Columbo again. And around this time,
You told me about this. So
yeah,
this is what it was, the Columbo that made the album.
yeah, because the album was done, the music album, and I like I said, I was just gonna make it um, I was just gonna make it like a little interactive music video. I've kind of
Mhm.
tinkered around with this idea before, never really completely finishing it in the past. So I thought, oh, it's really a good thing to do. And it would have been smart because I definitely could have done that in a summer. I definitely could have just made a nice looking environment out of kit bashed assets, had a camera floating around there with the music playing, maybe allow you to select different tracks. I could have handled that in the summer. But no, I really started binging Columbo again. I blame Amazon Prime because all the 70s episodes are on Amazon Prime. And then I like freaking bought the DVD box set so I could watch the 1989 through 2003 run of the show. And it just really got, man, I really want one of my great desires. Actually, people who know me well in game dev, going all the way back to my time at SMU Guildhall, even to the times I had at Human Head. Everyone knows I've always wanted to work on detective games.
Mhm.
That's always been a desire. It's been an unfulfilled desire of mine, actually. There's been some near misses at Human Head. We had a project canceled that was going to be like a massive, like AAA sort of detective game. Canceled early on, right? I mean, way early. Way earlier than anything. That's why it's not really news. Like, as you know, Kip, when we're talking about the going back to our game dev soup to nuts, this is one of those green light things, right? Where lots of projects kind of bubble up, but they're not that. They haven't, a lot of money hasn't been put behind them, right? That's kind of what that one was. When I was in school, like, you got to pitch what your senior capstone, well, not senior, it's grad school, but what your capstone project would be. And I
Mhm.
pitched a detective game. It didn't. No one voted on it, so it didn't happen. This has been an unfulfilled desire, and I'm like, I really want to do this. So I thought, well, what if instead of having the music having it be Nevada, the uh, like a music video thing, how about it's a detective story, or really a mystery, because your character is not a detective. What if it's simply a mystery that you have to solve in rural Nevada? If which, because like the album cover, if you go search Rob Howard Nevada, if you search on Amazon or Spotify, it's all out there. It's an
Mhm.
actual picture I took when I was driving through Humboldt County,
Mhm.
Nevada, and so I thought, okay, I can do a game where you kind of solve a 1 hour mystery, right, of
Mhm.
a murder that happens in a secluded rural area of Nevada. Because I always been fascinated when you drive through the American West. It's so open and desolate. There's like there's towns of like 50 people. And even in between towns, there's like vast stretches where it's like, and then you'll see like one house, and you wonder what is that, and you go and like you discover that you can buy like 40 acres of land for like $10,000, like in these rural stretches, right? And some people will do that. Um, and I was inspired to start working on it. And here's how far I got. The environments are built. I'm not going to say they're at your level, Kip Carbone. They would never be at your level.
Well, if I didn't
Um,
build them, nothing will be at that
that's
level,
right.
technically.
And
So,
I used Unreal Landscape. I kit bashed some stuff.
mhm.
I spent about $100 on the Epic Store buying assets and stuff to get enough of the idea across. I have the characters together. You kind of have to stretch. Again, this is a ruggedly indie one-man operation. I'll also tell you, as a complete side, I was also really inspired by Wayne Harvey. Go listen to that episode, folks. Because
Mhm.
remember when Wayne was like, hey, I made this card game, this blackjack game, really just to prove I can make a complete game myself. And now, he's making the Soak, which is still in development and all
Mhm.
that. I was inspired by that. I go, one of the things that happens when you go to school for game development, and it's all about team game development, playing a tiny role on a large team. And there's just something that's really bugged me about having never just myself made something from beginning to end, no matter how small it is. I think we've actually interviewed a number of people. Your friend that had with Aqua Lungers was another interview. Like, I've been inspired by these people. We tried a little tiny project on the side once, and actually I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes on that, which we'll talk about, I guess, a little bit since I brought it up. And I kind of know why that kind of just went brr and kind of just hung out.
We should try to resuscitate that, but
Absolutely,
that's for another
yes.
time. That's for another time.
Yes,
That's for
and we
another time.
should, because I've learned a whole heck of a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I got environments built, I got characters. Yeah, for now they're just gonna stand still and do they have some like prepackaged idle items, so they're not in T pose, and all
Mhm.
that. And like, here's the backbone of it is I've spent a lot of time in the last couple of years on my own, and actually as part of a big part of this kit was a little side project that we were
Mhm.
just kind of doing for fun. I was doing a lot of things to build on my own basic RPG structures. And so this project, Nevada, is really on the backbone of all those basic RPG structures, like very simple character leveling, very simple turn-based kind of UI-driven combat. And what I've done here is I've basically just made it like instead of like fighting enemies, you're interrogating people, right? You're questioning them, but it works out like a turn-based fight basically. And the idea is you kind of run around, you talk to these characters, you collect evidence, and you kind of equip evidence like you would weapons and armor. Like, for instance, like a written confession would be like the most incredible sword you ever had. It would be like a sword of like 10 billion damage, right? It's a written confession, right? Whereas like a piece of gum is like a paper sword that's like worth 1 point or something, right? Like you collect these things, and it's sort of like RPG weapons, but they're not. It's like pieces of evidence and pieces, where you interrogate witnesses with in order to get to the conclusion you're driving at, right? And it's got all this music that I recorded kind of in the background, and one of the rules is like I have to use all that. If I need a sound effect, I'm going to try to extract it from that album and everything. And yeah, like I said, the environments are there, the characters are there, kind of the basic RPG structures have been built. Today, I've been working on like the evidence collecting systems. I would say I'm probably about 50% of the way to a very basic alpha where you can kind of play this 1 hour story. That's
Wow.
where I'm at. So now that
That's impressive.
I've done an info dump kit, what do you think of this? What does this sound
I think that's
interesting to you?
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super. Well, I mean, myself, I'm like a huge mystery detective point and click kind of like, that's like a game right up my alley. And I think certainly the fact that it seems like very digestible, that it's like an hour long or whatever. That's really appealing to me. But mysteries and kind of detective stories in general I can't get enough of them myself. So I'm really, my interest is peaked. So that's super exciting. I can't
Good.
wait to
Yeah.
play it.
And I'll tell you, because I this will be important to I think our audience too. I alluded to we won't go into what it is because that would be revealing our IP. I'm not going to do that. You
Uh,
know, it was just kind of a for fun thing we were doing, and you know,
what
it's just
thing?
the thing that we have together, the little the
Oh,
hobby that
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
just wanted to explain to the audience why the lessons I learned from that. It's definitely not dead, but kind of why, because this is very common, by the way. Even seasoned game developers, they get together. They're like, "Hey, we should do something." Right, and it happens.
That's yeah. Everybody's like, let's do this side project while we're doing this project because we hate our job so much. Let's do this.
Right, and then it just like blows up and never. Well, it maybe doesn't blow up, but it just doesn't happen, right? And in
Yeah.
my case, here's what I learned. I think this is fascinating because it kind of flies in the face of many of the things we've talked about on this show. But I've figured it out. I've reconciled it.
Mhm.
When you're in a team, like you and I are keenly and well trained, both our education and School of Hard Knocks, to game develop in a team that's been assembled to make a game with with external kind of sources kind of looking over it and funding it, and that is a certain type of game development, right? You have to be careful, you have to plan. That's again that Fred Thompson hunt for Red October. You don't take a dump without having a plan, son. That sort of thing. You don't design on the fly, and this, you've heard us talk about you know game jamming is really great for kind of training and experience, but maybe not great for like formal development. When you're doing something as an indie thing on your own, and you've been trained primarily to work in a team as we have, what I found is you end up spending, I think, too much time on your own process when you have to kind of go backwards and you think you'd have to go. Like in a team setting, I would definitely not advise everyone just go dive in and make stuff. No, you want to plan, right? So you don't make the wrong thing, or you don't whatever. But that mentality I think doesn't work as well when you're just trying to make a little side thing with just you or even like a couple of people, because you know uh, you have to have momentum. You have to have development momentum. And when you spend, I remember with the thing that we were doing, I spent a lot of time actually in Excel, like figuring out, okay, like how many hours is this going to take for, like how many tasks are we going to need to get like a viable little demo, and all these things. And that was a significant amount of time. And then I would like do a little bit of real work, and I would go and say, okay, like now I'm going to go in back into the spreadsheet and see how much time that took so I can kind of forecast. I think that stuff is important if you already have a demo, already have some structure built. That is because, again, when you're in a team, it's just a different thing. Here, you just need the forward progress, the forward momentum of getting the train on the tracks. You have to get the train on the tracks. And because this started, my personal thing this summer started out so simply, it's just like an interactive music video. I kind of freed myself of that team game development baggage a little bit and just dove in and just started constructing stuff. And then, it was more fun. I was actually really enjoying it. I was actually making like steady progress. And yeah, there are things that you're going to do that you're going to run into issues where you develop a system, it doesn't work well, you have to scrap it. But that doesn't matter as much when it's just you, right? Because you're not inconveniencing other people. And so, what I would do, Kip, if we rewind back to when we started our little thing, what I would have probably done is just made a prototype first, and then started kind of where we started, right? And now I know to do that. Now, if you're going to build a game on your own, just build something. That doesn't mean that's going to be the thing you ship or whatever, but just build something. Try to do what it is that you're doing. Get right in the editor, get right in there, try to do it. And learn what you can learn, and then you can kind of go more formal. Does that make sense? I just think it's the difference between, when you're in a team and you're trained to be in a team, you're just, you just can't go rogue like that. You just can't. It just won't work. But when it's a small thing, either yourself or I would say up to, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 people at the most, you kind of have to, you don't want to be choked by, you don't want to get so, sort of bent out of shape over process to the point where you're not making, it's just a much more agile thing, and it was kind of a revelation for me to be like, hey, wait a minute. like this is kind of fundamentally different, and it feels more like when I was in a band musically, because that's what you do when you're in a band. You don't, have pre-production meetings when you're writing music in a band. You just get together with your mates and you say, hey, how do you like the sound of this chord? And they'll be like, hey, how do you like that bass line? Let me try this rhythm, right? And it's really organic. That wouldn't work in that doesn't work in a symphony orchestra, but it works in a small band. Same thing here. Am I making sense at all, or is this just
Yes. No, I get it. Yes, yes, it is.
authentic frontier gibberish, as they would say?
I've never heard that term before.
That comes from Blazing Saddles, incidentally.
Oh, okay.
The great Mel Brooks.
I've
film.
never seen it. I've never seen it.
So anyway, that's news I wanted to get out there.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic.
And I'm just about at the stage where I'm gonna start maybe doing some screen captures, and kind of starting to like promote it just a little bit, because actually I think the environment is just really cool because it takes advantage of what Unreal does well. Like the landscape tool in Unreal is incredible, so it has like this massive environment like that actually takes significant time to move, so much so that I had to buy a freaking golf cart add-on from the store,
really?
So that you had a fun way to traverse, because you can't, if you make the character run as fast as a car, then it's stupid, right? It takes you, there's no realism in that. So I thought I need to give the character a vehicle, but I don't want it to be a car, because the whole idea is that you pulled off the highway, your car is out there somewhere, and you've kind of gone into the wilderness. So I didn't want you to have a car. And I thought, well, what would they have at this hunting lodge? That's kind of the main hub of the game. It's like a hunting lodge. I'm like, they would have maybe they would have a little golf cart, And so I bought that, and I fixed it up so it would actually work. But yeah, you can do that. So it's got this gorgeous, like I bought like an Afghanistan asset pack because it was close enough to what I thought Nevada looked like for my times driving through. So yeah, it's actually pretty cool looking in parts. All right, well, I blabbed way too long about my own personal work. And it also puts me on the hook to actually do what I say I'm going to do. So that's part of the.
Well, now you got to finish it by October 2nd, your birthday. So
that's right, and I turned 40, so that would be kind of a cool feather in my cap. Turning 40 to be able to say that I released. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's going to be a 1-hour experience. It's going to be a 0.5, which I'll define as feature complete. You can play the game. There's going to be like all kinds of systems I wished it would have. That's why I'll say, I'll probably just keep working on it. But my kind of goal was to maybe do one of these per summer. We'll see how I feel about this one, if I want to call it finished or whatever. Anyway, that's Nevada based on the musical album. Hope to get something out by my birthday, and maybe something additional that polishes it more or whatever. So yeah, I'm excited. It's been a fun creative outlet. So Kip, speaking of fun creative outlets, I think this podcast is a fun creative outlet. And Kip, how can people support this fun creative outlet? Other than, we know if they can send us money, yes, but besides sending us money, pallets of cash, what else can they do?
You could hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, leave a comment below for something you'd like to see. And what else am I missing? Am I missing something else?
Let's see.
Follow us on Instagram and Twitter.
Yes, that's right. And you can leave a positive review on iTunes.
That's right.
On Google Play, on Spotify. I think you can do some kind of review on Spotify. Our podcast does show up there. All the various platforms. And let me say, we have had a little bump in listenership recently, which is really nice to see. Really happy to see that. So, thank you, new listeners. I think one thing I've been telling.
Thanks, Mom.
That's right. We've forced more of a relative. No, just kidding.
We've got 2 more listeners. Your mom and my mom.
Yes.
my mom can't use computers. She doesn't know how to use YouTube to watch this.
So yeah, what you can do though, because I started asking people to do this, and I think it has had an effect. If you are currently a listener, tell your friends to listen. Pass it on to your friends. I think that's an amazing way to promote the show. Pass it along. All right, I'm actually already getting to the point where my voice is failing from over talking, so we should probably actually do the main focus of our podcast here. So finishing games, Kip. Finishing games. So
Yeah.
once upon a time, that's a thing we did. You know that? We actually finished games.
There's a couple games I finished.
I know. It doesn't seem like it's how long has it been since I've finished a game I've worked on has been done. Well, yeah, it would be right at the end of my time at Human Head. We released a
Mhm.
mobile game. I think that's still out there called what is it? It's based on the super popular sort of Frogger type game. It was like kind of a medieval dungeon version of that. Crossy Kingdom, that's what it's called. Yes,
Mm.
I think that's like my last completed project. Like shipped title, if you would. And so that would have been 2016. And yeah, tumbleweeds. Actually, at the beginning of my career, I was like shipping all the time, baby. I was just like, bam, every year I'd ship a game. Like Despicable Me came out, like that was done in 6 months, turned around, packaged game,
Yeah.
PS2, Wii, then Earth Defense Force, then Ben 10 Galactic Racing. And then there was like a kind of a brief dry spell there because Prey 2 just all that, but then Bioshock
Mhm.
Infinite, Batman Arkham Origins, Lost Within, and I'm sure I'm missing something in between that. But like then after that, there was then I think the Crossy Kingdom came out then. And then it's very. By the way, it's very common in game development to go long stretches, right? Do the canceled projects, whatever. Kip, what's your last finished project? I think they know the answer to this, but what's your last released game?
Recore. I think that's it. Yeah, that's got to be it. Yeah, because I haven't shipped anything since then.
Yep.
I
So
think that's it. Yeah.
so let's talk about the process of finishing a game. All right. So you've crunched, maybe not, we hope not, but maybe you did. And so there's only the one kind of thing I want to discuss just a little bit is what they used to call lot check. And I think lot check is almost like an archaic term for this now. I think
Mhm.
getting certified is a more up to date
Yeah.
term.
Yeah.
And that is when you finish the game, but then you send it to Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, and then they, if you play a game on console, the example I always like to give people is like, okay, if you play Madden, right, and you just yank your controller cord out because you're mad at the game, like they intercepted your pass or whatever, there's going to be a dialog box that comes out and says, you need to plug a controller back into the Xbox controller port or whatever, right? There's going to be some default message. That's a lot check thing or a cert thing. You have to include that message, and it has to be worded exactly the way Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo want you to word that. Right. Those are the sorts of things. There's like a checklist of things you have to have that the platform holder, kind of requires you to have. There's going to be things like accessibility and localization, and if that's depending on what regions your game's coming out for. There's going to be performance standards, like the platform holders are going to be like, you cannot be running at 5 frames per second, for long stretches of time,
Mhm.
unless you're an Earth Defense Force game, and I guess that's desirable. um, but yeah, that's lot check, and obviously as a level designer and you as an artist, this is actually one area where uh, we're not involved in it all that much, right? Our work is done by this stage, right? I mean, at this point in the project, I'm fixing. You're probably working on the next project, right? You're probably at this point.
Maybe sometimes. I
Yeah,
mean, sometimes, I guess I've been working on, bug. I mean, it depends on what project, but sometimes you're working on, cert bugs or whatever that, are like, oh, this thing is like over, like again, like you mentioned, whatever, like, oh, we're at, too low of a frame rate in a particular area and you have to figure it out or whatever thing there might be, or, yeah, it just depends. But yeah, I mean, hopefully you are, when it comes down to the very end, yeah, you've moved on to something else. Or you're just
right.
taking it easy.
Right, right. In my case, this is when a lot of the, hey, the player is blocked by this crate. Can someone go in and
Yeah.
move this crate? I mean, the bugs start to get really silly at this stage. I mean, they're still important, of course, but they get to be, they're not like, really deep, hard technical bugs, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
However, for the programmers, this is where, those guys are like, that pointer is bad on the memory module of the CPU unit on the driver board on the thing, and I need to go and, like, this is where they make the big money they make, right? Is a lot of times right at the end, getting optimized. Probably the craziest lot check cert project I can remember was Batman Arkham Origins, because we took on, it was basically another studio had started the port to the Wii U, and then that studio went out of business, and then Human Head took over, and it was understood from the start that, hey, this thing was another studio's. They went out with lost time, but we have to, like, this port has to come out with like all the other versions of Arkham Origins that are coming out. So we knew it was going to be crazy at the end. It was a
Mhm.
100%, we take this or go visit the unemployment office. So we're just going to put up with the fact that it's behind schedule from the start, right? So it was insane at the end. I mean, programmers, pulling all nighters. Those folks were just. There was this one kid that we had that was like wonderful kid. I really liked him a lot, and he was this really young kid. I think he was like 17 or 18. That was just brilliant, right? That we just hired, and was totally brilliant, and was like doing the deep programming to like optimize for console. He wasn't the only one, but he was one of them. And I just remember, coming to work in the morning, and he had obviously, like, either slept at the studio or like slept a few hours in his apartment and came back.
Mhm.
That was nuts. By the time the programmers were dealing with the certification stuff, I was already starting to draw maps up for the next game. Uh, and so I'm trying to think of like lot check or cert things. Really, again, Batman is the one that comes up the most. That was the one where I was definitely doing cert things. There was one bug that I fixed that I'm still proud of, because it's only fixed on the Wii U version, and it's an obscure one. It's something where you're in the Batcave and then something changes, and it changes the collision in the parts the player can get stuck on, basically inside the Batcave. And if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you get stuck in there, and you have to like restore a save point to continue. I fixed it. I found what was going on, and it was just kind of a particular Unreal thing. That was the engine they were using, that they were doing. And right after I submitted the fix, the word from Warner Brothers came in saying, "Do not fix this bug, not worth it." Right? Like, that's, because they'll do that. They'll say, "Well, this bug is too obscure. It won't affect hardly anybody. So don't waste, money and time." But I had already fixed it right before they sent that out. So I thought, the Wii U version has that bug fixed, and the other ones don't. Right.
Mm.
So that was the one project where I spent some time doing kind of cert type stuff. Um, all right, well then let's move on then to what happens when the game is done. So that's tropical parties, fruity drinks, huge bonuses, right? Kip, I know you got like at least 3 shipped game cars. Maserati, Lamborghini, a Peugeot convertible from the late 1950s. That's referring to Columbo's car. But
Is that what he has?
yeah, that crappy car. Yeah, it's actually
Is
probably
that your
worth a
dream
lot.
car now?
No, definitely not. That is an ugly car. But like, so Kip, what happens when the game ships? Big money, right? Huge success.
For some people, for some games, yeah, there's huge success. I think it's kind of a big relief. I
It
mean,
is.
it's kind of anticlimactic, really, because you've been working on this thing for so long, and then it kind of goes away that you're just like, oh, and then on to the next thing. I think a lot of the projects I've worked on, I didn't take enough time to kind of celebrate the completion, at least the ones I did, and so I just really took it for granted that, like, it's like no big deal, and like it's just on to the next thing, on to the next thing. But it is a big deal, and it's a big, it should be something that's celebrated. And even if there's no celebration technically by the studio or whoever, you should sort of know that, like, at least it's a milestone for yourself, that like, hey, you've done this, and it's a credit on you professionally, and it's a big deal. But that project, you kind of do the last thing on it. It gets cert, and then it's done, and then you could kind of wait for the release, and then you kind of, sometimes it's cool to see. I know with like Metroid Prime 3, we got on the cover of like at the time Nintendo Power, so that was pretty cool
That
to
would have
see a
blown
game.
my mind. That would have been. I would have
That was kind of a
framed.
big.
I would have framed
I've
that.
I've got it. I don't know. It's not here in the office, but I've got it framed. And that was kind of like, and that Nintendo Power isn't a thing now, but Nikita has two. My wife has two Nintendo Power covers for her games, so I'm like, what? But at least to get one of them for me, I was like very, like that was like a big life accomplishment of like, wow, like because as a kid I was always, I mean, just like a devout reader of Nintendo Power,
Mhm.
and like I was always hooked on it. So I mean, to have a game that I worked on in it, it was like amazed. Or you might get other magazine covers or something, and I mean, well, there were magazines. I don't know if there's are anymore, but you might see reviews for it. I mean, now on YouTube and stuff for games, and it's kind of funny to watch a lot of the reviews for projects I've worked on, or see what other people say. It's like it's either like it's pretty spot on, and yeah. So like if you go look at a lot of stuff for Recore, it's pretty spot on. I think a lot of the comments.
That's one thing when a game comes out. I think you nailed something important. Like people probably wonder from the outside looking in, like, hey, like when there's like problems with a game or issues, right? Like
Mhm.
here's the thing, we're usually pretty well aware of them. Like I'm never surprised really by the critiques the games I've worked on get, right? Like in fact I can usually see them coming because they're usually the result of compromises you were forced to make for this or that reason. So like with Earth Defense
Yeah.
Force, like I knew we were going to get nailed on the fact we didn't have 100 levels. Instead we had 15 long levels instead of like 100 short ones. I knew we were going to get nailed on that, and we often do,
Mhm.
right? I knew that we were going to get nailed on like the characters not being persistent from the various modes. Like the survival mode characters weren't the same characters that you were building in the main game. We'd get nailed on that, and we were, right. But I also, it works the other way too. The things that I thought were cool, people generally recognized as cool. The only thing that took me by surprise is Justin McElroy's review for what was called Joystick. They're no longer around. Justin McElroy's still around, happily reviewing games. Wish him well. Don't know the person at all, or anything like that. But he wrote, I suggest it's still archived, so look up
Mhm.
Justin McElroy, Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon review. He savaged the game, and
Uh-huh.
it was a review that was so negative that it was hilarious. Like I'm not
Yeah.
mad; it was
That's what I like those
hilarious.
things. I think they're
It
funny.
is
They
it
don't
is
they don't hurt me at all.
funny. In
Yeah.
fact, hold on, I'm actually going to look this up so I can read some of it.
Uh,
Those are the things that take you by surprise. I mean, like a lot of the reviews that are like that nail what is wrong with the game. You're like, okay, that's fine. And then there are some that are like dumb that just like are totally wrong, and you're just like,
yeah.
what are they thinking? But I'm gonna look this up because I have to read some of this because it's just amazing. I'm probably gonna spell this wrong because I'm doing this live, and so it won't come up right away. It came right up as the top result, right? So no problem.
Uh-huh.
All right, so the title of it is Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon Review. Shoot, 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 end. So you know where this is going already, right? Um,
Mhm.
and it says, it's not that it's a failure. I can see what Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon wants to be, a mindless, explosive shooting gallery. I can also see that it does a pretty good job of meeting that goal. It's mindless, stuff explodes, there's shooting, top marks all around. No matter how I tried to see the brighter side of this basically good hearted game, I couldn't shake an inescapable truth. This is dumb, and you deserve better. And that's like
Yikes.
it gets better, right? Let me just kind of, I won't read the whole thing, but I'll just sample. Um, you know, um, let's see here. All right, trying to find some other. Right, yeah, this part here. But because no matter what you're firing and who you're firing with, you're still just leaning on the right trigger until the voice in your head tells you don't have to anymore. Maybe the bugs explode in a gooey mess a little earlier or later than they otherwise would have, and maybe you have some people to talk to while you do it. But as long as you keep on that trigger and don't let up until the giant bugs die, you'll eventually prevail. Or not, it doesn't matter. I mean, there's some sort of existential angst thing going on. But like the best part, um, yeah, okay. So, right. Yeah, this part's great. The only times my pulse even approached pounding was when I killed particularly large bugs or their ships, and even that excitement was generated by the sheer scale of my opponent. To put it another way, the height of Insect Armageddon sophistication is when it prods whatever ancient holdover in my brain kept my caveman ancestors away from dinosaurs. What's that? Cavemen never coexisted with dinosaurs? Sorry, I don't know that because this dumb game has turned me into a big dumb idiot. So,
Yikes.
and it goes on like that, like, and you know that review was again so negative. Like it's like when you read it, you're getting mad, and then it crosses a threshold
Yeah.
where you're not mad anymore. And it got like I know the guys over at one of the major blogs joked about it
Uh-huh.
in their review. Like it came like it's a review I always share. Like every new employer I go to, I share that review because it's
Uh-huh.
like so hilarious. Like Justin McElroy, you're a treasure. I don't know why you took our game so seriously. Yes, you're absolutely right. It is a mindless shoot 'em up, mission accomplished. I think it's fun as hell. But like I find it weird that the mere existence of a action laden arcade game of that nature seems to like be so wildly offensive. Like
Uh-huh.
it's just hilarious. um but anyway, yeah, you're totally right what you said earlier. It's a relief. And there's also, you're right, like I wish I would have enjoyed it more too. I wish I would have savored it even more than I did. But I will say
Mhm.
this, Kip, I will say this. One thing I've never had, and maybe I never will have it, Kip, is I never got to go to a release party in my career, which is bizarre because I've
Oh.
shipped a lot of games. And
I don't think I've ever gone to one either. I don't think.
what?
Did I? Maybe?
Well, here's for me why, and then you could say why for you.
Yeah.
So for me, the reason was at Vicious Cycle, they just didn't do one for Despicable Me, probably because, well, it's a small license game, whatever. I also think when we talked to Wayne Harvey on that episode, I think he kind of intimated that the publisher was just not who owned us. You know, the publisher owned us, right? So
Hmm.
they weren't really appreciative of that kind of money spend on parties. I think that probably had something to do with it. I think they did have a party for Insect Armageddon, but I was working for Human Head, so I had gone. Like I had finished the game before I left them, but sometimes
Hmm.
publishers will hold a game. You know, they won't release it as soon as they can because they want to put it out in like a better window for sales. And they thought, well, midsummer would be better. We basically had that game done. We had that game done in like around Christmas time,
Hmm.
not in time for Christmas, but around Christmas time. And they never would have wanted to release a kind of budget action game around Christmas time, anyways. It would have gotten buried by whatever the big releases were. And some of the other games I worked on, well, Bioshock Infinite, well, yeah, they invited me to the party, but I was already back in Madison, Wisconsin, and they weren't going to pay for my plane ticket to Boston. And, couldn't afford it. Same thing with Arkham Origins. Like, they sent me an invite to a party in Montreal. Again, I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. Can't afford it.
Yeah.
So I missed out on a lot of parties that way. And yeah, so what about you, Kip? What kept you out of the parties?
I think similar. Like I had moved on once the project had sort of finally. Like I know on Metroid, I already started work on another gig. Other times, like when we had, like we just kind of had like a little like rap thing. Like they kind of took us out to eat. It wasn't like a big deal. It wasn't. It was pretty anticlimactic, really. I think, and
Right.
that's. I think that's. I mean that. I guess when I say I didn't really celebrate some of the stuff, I think it was sort of institutionalized in the places I was at. Like
Hmm.
they were just like didn't make a big deal about it. I think because it wasn't a big deal to them. But I think that was a hard a hard thing for me to deal with because, or I think later on it kind of created a lot of problems because I sort of had this anxiety to like, I need to ship a game to see what that exhilaration is, and if I don't, then it's going to be a big deal. You know, like yeah, like I mean, and that's kind of where I'm at now in my career of like I'm at a studio where we're going to ship a game, so we can ship a game, right? I mean, in a good game too. And we've all sort of been at places where we're just not shipping games, and I think I've had enough of it, and we're like,
Yeah.
we need to ship,
Right.
and
Yep. For sure. I mean,
I'm sick of this.
it's kind of funny because like you and I both spent time at blue collar game dev studios where
Yeah,
shipping was you shipped. It didn't matter. You shipped, baby. Finished because you had you were just disciplined that way because you weren't going to get paid otherwise, right? Like Human Head was like that.
yeah.
Mr. Cycle was like that. You shipped.
I think that's why they didn't care about just like, it's just another product. We gotta get like, it was kind of scary sometimes when you ship because you're like, oh, what do we do next? You know, like you're always like, when you get to the end of it, you're like, in the blue collar sense, you're always like asking management, like, hey, so are we like talking to somebody else after this, or like, what's the plan, or like,
Right,
what's,
and
what do we got lined up? Is there,
that can hurt when you work for the blue collar studios. That can hurt your
yeah,
enjoyment of finishing because you're worried, excuse me, about having a job at all. But I will
yeah,
say, on the brighter side, my first boxed retail game, going to a GameStop and seeing your own game on the shelf is truly amazing. That is fun. That's really fun. And that's one of the things where I'm really glad I got started when I did because obviously fewer and fewer games now get a box release. When I
yeah,
when I started, it was still basically everything. By the
mhm,
time, I went to Purdue, it was like, well, if you work for Activision on Call of Duty, you'll get a box release. Almost everyone else is Steam or digital, right? If you're
yeah,
making
yeah.
Mario Brothers, you get a box release, right? So my throat is killing me, folks. That's why when you're watching the video feed, you're seeing me hit the water. It's because we're now at an hour and my voice is actually starting to fail. um,
That golden voice has
yes, the golden
it's
microphone.
hit its
So,
peak.
Kip, surely there was. Well, actually, let me say your biggest sense of satisfaction. Which project gave you the biggest sense of satisfaction to finish?
I don't know. They're all like they're all really good. I don't know, like that sense and like the I guess like the pride in your work and like they're all I guess the finished product of like shipping, I guess, was probably I don't know. There's been projects I mean I guess like, the projects I've worked on that I've been most proud of have not shipped. But maybe I guess there's not that much to choose from.
You had to be proud of Metroid Prime 3,
That
dog.
one,
Come
I guess
on.
you'd have to be. I mean,
Uh,
that one was pretty good. Yeah. I mean, that one,
yeah.
that was like super high quality. That was such a fun project to work on. I guess that's what it, yeah, I'll go with that one. What's yours?
Oh wow. Well, I think I have different. I've been very blessed. I think because up until the last 4 years, I mean, I was shipping things constantly. In fact, I used to kind of laugh at my friends in the industry that were like, taking forever to ship anything, and
Mhm.
and yet I was just cranking games out, and so they're all kind of like my children, which is the stereotypical thing to say. But if I had, I mean, so they're kind of different, right? I mean, Earth Defense Force remains kind of the most pure game, right? Now, look, I actually like games of intricate stories, and we've talked about Hideo Kojima's games, and so I'm not, AAA is bad, and I have to like make these games that make you to quote Justin McElroy, a big dumb idiot. But I also really do like the simplistic charm of a game like that. So that was fun, but Bioshock Infinite was also immensely satisfying to work on because you're working on a piece of art at that point. A piece of interactive art. I know that raises the hackles of some people. Some people like you can't call
Mhm.
games art. That game was it was
Those
interesting.
people can go to hell.
That's right.
Did I say that on this podcast? Yeah, I did. Who gives a shit?
Sorry, folks. That's what happens after I've been talking and talking and talking. Is the voice starts to go. But yeah, I would say that Lost Within I brought up a lot. And that one, is the one that nobody didn't sell a ton. No one really knows about it, but I
Hmm.
was just more than any other. I mean, when you think about, okay, I contributed some things I'm darn proud of in BioShock Infinite, right? I mean, there's that encounter, that combat encounter in the police station area. I did the kind of ground level scripting for that.
I
People,
love that area. That area that played so well and was so slick. That whole thing through the police station.
right? And yeah, sure. I mean, someone else did the layout for that. I mean, just
Hmm.
just so people understand. But I did do the combat scripting, and I thought it turned out cool. But Lost Within, I mean, I was involved. Since it was a human head game. I mean, like I made the safes, I made the doors and how they worked, and like the lockers you can hide in. I coded all of that. The sound of the little ghost kid is my oldest daughter running around in my house while I'm holding a recording unit to her. Like there's a million different little things in that game. Like the little radio announcer that you hear is like me. Like, it's so deeply personal. I
Hmm.
created so many little systems and sounds, and like I directed all the voice actors in that game. I was just so deeply involved in every aspect of that game that it just was, a lot of fun to make. It might have been the most deeply satisfying game development because I was in kind of I was fully mature as a developer, right? I can code, I
Hmm.
can not just do level design, but I can code and I can do sound and I can do all these things. And so I was proud of that. So I had some cool experiences. Obviously, what I hope to do now is, and we were both kind of in the same boat, right? I want to ship this little tiny, 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 tiny indie thing. You want to ship the game that you're working on with your company. We both want to keep making things, even though we're in different positions. Me as a, uh, uh, you know, one man band. Um, probably release something for $5 on itch.io or something, and for a proper company. The point is I want to keep making. I want to keep making and making and making. I don't know where it'll lead, but I just want to keep putting things out there. I feel a pretty strong drive, to do that, as I'm sure you do as well,
Yes.
because that is
Yes. I think
all we
that's
can do.
always.
That's all we can do
That's
is
what we
put.
do though is make stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, and you have to. There's got to be, whatever field you're in, you have to keep moving forward. And I see the position I have as an educator now. This is, I'm given the opportunity to prove to myself that I can make something that resembles a complete experience. That can actually contribute things that I'm not necessarily seeing in other games, no matter how primitive it has to be, because it's just coming from myself. So. Um, all right. Well, wow. I mean, first of all, I want to thank our listeners for kind of going through this series with us, starting from. I absolutely recommend that you start from the
The
green
soup
light. Yep, the soup.
started the soup and then ended the nuts.
That's right. And obviously, if this one, I'll probably put in the show notes. You should go to about the 25-minute mark if you want to actually go to the, because we talked quite a bit about other stuff at the beginning. But that's okay. This is the wrap up. This is the denouement, if you will, the end cap, the coda, you might say, of
The
our
nuts.
series. That's right. The nuts. Yeah, the game is out. And like I said, seeing that. Let me. I want to close super positive. So, like I said, seeing the game in a box in a store is an amazing feeling. Love it.
Hmm.
I love the fact that I can go to a store now. I can go to a GameStop now, even though I haven't shipped a game in 4 years. I can find plenty of things I was involved in on the shelves. And thanks to the remastering craze, like there's Bioshock Collection on the Switch. I have a game on the Switch. How cool is that, right? That's awesome. Um, that's a neat feeling. It really is a neat feeling. And then the really cool thing is there was this kid that did a review of Lost Within on YouTube, like maybe like a 12-year-old kid,
Hmm.
extremely enthusiastic, and it was from the heart, off the cuff, just in front of a cell phone camera, and a bunch of us from Human Head made positive responses on that, like, hey, that's great, I get like even games like a Despicable Me the game. I'll find someone whose kid played that and was like, yeah, my kid had a great time with that game. What I with Earth Defense Force, what I find a lot are parents, because it's a co-op game. Parents that played it with their kids because it is violent in the sense that you're blowing up bugs, but it's not violent in the sense that it would bother parents. Like so many games, like, I have kids, right? Kip, you have a son. Um,
Hmm.
there are many games where you're going to be very uncomfortable playing them with your kids now, right? I mean, that's been true for a long time, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
certainly BioShock Infinite, which I'm very proud of, would be a little weird if I played it with like a 7-year-old, right? But Earth Defense Force is like, I got so many comments from fathers saying, I played this with my son or daughter, and it was so wonderful to play a game where I didn't feel squeamish about what was in the cutscenes or whatever, and it was just a real pure experience. And that's hundreds of thousands of people, extrapolated. Like for a minor game, like Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon, I think sold okay, but it was like a minor success.
Hmm.
And when I release a musical album, 10 people listen to it, right? Like even Lost Within, I'm quite certain a few 100,000 people played, right? And so that's a much bigger impact on the world that I was ever going to have, like just doing music before I got into games. And that's to speak nothing of the games that I know have been played by millions of people, like BioShock, like Batman. There's some deep satisfaction to that. There really is. I mean, watching the credits and seeing your name go down in the credits and all that is really quite satisfying. As I'm sure it is for you, Kip, as well, despite the realities of what we do that kind of seep in. So. All right,
Yep,
folks.
yep.
Kip, any closing thoughts on the nuts part, the soup to nuts, and with me?
Nope, we're at the nuts, and it's over.
All right,
It's
all right.
done. Fiend.
All right, folks. Well, we're going to have other awesome game development topics. I'm sure we're going to hit now that we've done this. I've had a blast doing this series. Again, I'm Rojo Games on Twitter. I am Rojo Games on Parler now. If you have that alternative Twitter platform, I'm Rojo Games on Facebook. Rojo Games 80 on Instagram, and I'm now Rojo Games 80 on Twitch. I believe that is my handle on Twitch now. I just made that account the other day. I think as I get deeper into Nevada's development, I'm going to start Twitch streaming some of that development. I didn't want to do it when it was just like a white box, right? Like, here's like a gray plane. Wow, I'm going to make a hill on the gray. Now that I have like some real stuff built, maybe I'll start Twitch streaming some development as well, so
Ooh,
stay tuned.
that's gonna be exciting to see.
Yeah. All right, yeah, so everyone, have a good night and stay on the grid.
And keep well hid.